I'm Ted Wiprud. Thank you so much for coming by today, and thank you to Composers Now for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to devote this time to some of the music I've composed over the last 10 years or so, specifically works that are influenced by music of other cultures. Several times in recent years, I've become obsessed with music from other traditions, to the point where characteristics of those musics cross over into my own vocabulary. Let's start with gugak, the traditional music of Korea. Starting around 2010, I traveled to South Korea many times doing educational projects for the New York Philharmonic. My ears perked up at the sound of samul nori. It's a highly rhythmic, colorful expression of ancient Korean folk music, although samul nori itself was created as a popular form only in the 1970s. To give you a flavor of this music, I want to share with you part of a promotional video made by a group I've become very friendly with, Nurun Machi. This music struck me as so vital, so rooted in folk life, and so different from everything I knew, I had to learn more about it. I met musicians, attended rehearsals, saw shows, and the more I learned about gugak, the traditional music of Korea, the more strange and intriguing and intoxicating it all seemed. And the more I learned about its roots in shamanism and in agricultural cycles and in all kinds of rituals, the more resonance it took on for me. It also felt like time to try something new in my own music. I wondered what would happen if I experimented with some gugak ideas, like the idea of pitch as a moving gesture, or of rhythms that repeat but flexibly, or just the tone, the earthy but dignified tone of gugak. The opportunity came when I met an extraordinary artist named Gamin, who plays various gugak wind instruments, including the piri, which is like an oboe. She was in New York on a fellowship, and so I proposed composing for her a quintet for piri with strings. Gamin not only accepted, she became my tutor in the basics of gugak, and of course the piri. This was the beginning of years of increasingly serious study, but the first result was a piece that took me in a very new direction, a piece titled Mudang. As my first gugak-inspired piece, Mudang reflects my initial studies. It closely tracks a form known as sanjo, which is a 19th century genre for solo gugak instrument accompanied by the two-headed drum known as the jangu. Sanjo has a series of well-defined sections, almost like movements that flow one to the next, and each has a characteristic rhythmic pattern on which the drummer improvises. Tempos start slow and stately and gradually increase to tremendous speed. Now, the harmonic language of my mudang is considerably more chromatic than the diatonic piri would normally play. It's an instrument pitched in A flat. But of course, I was working with a virtuoso who literally wrote the book on modern piri, so almost anything was possible. I treated the string quartet sometimes as a drum, sometimes as a kind of aura around the piri, and sometimes as a full melodic partner. The title Mudang means female shaman. It's a nod to the traditional role of piri in shamanic rites, and also to Gamin's role in helping make this piece possible. The whole piece is about 10 minutes long. Here's the very beginning. It's like an incantation played by Gamin with the ever-adventurous string quartet, Ethel. Then here's the ending of Mudon, working itself up into quite a frenzy, and then with a coda that recalls the opening. So that's a taste of Mudang, my 2014 collaboration with Gamin and the string quartet Ethel. Following this, in 2016, I got the opportunity to study gugak at the National Gugak Center in Seoul, Korea. It's a government-funded cultural center that, among other things, subsidizes non-Korean composers and musicians to study gugak in hopes of incorporating gugak instruments into contemporary composition. I also traveled out of Seoul to catch authentic folk performances. This all led to a commission from the Pacific Rim Music Festival, led by composer Hee Kyung Kim at UC Santa Cruz, for a quintet for kayagum and strings, for the kayagum virtuoso GRE and the Borromeo string quartet. The kayagum is a plucked string instrument like a zither or koto. The player can bend pitches by applying pressure with the left hand behind the movable bridges. And a great player puts tremendous expression into the way pitches bend as they decay. It's a sound known as nonghyun. And this magical sound became the basis and the title of my quintet. This time, rather than follow a traditional form like sanjo, I tried turning the whole quintet into a giant kayagum. We'll hear the first half of the piece, which begins all pizzicato, and then unexpectedly blossoms into arco playing with notes and harmonies that disappear into ever-widening vibratos. It's an evocation of that expressive Korean sonority called nonghyun. This performance is from the premiere at the Pacific Rim Music Festival with GRE, kayagum, the Borromeo String Quartet, and David Milnes conducting. Now let's turn to Native American music, specifically Lakota drumming. In 2018, I became composer in residence with the South Dakota Symphony in a national program called Music Alive from New Music USA and the League of American Orchestras. My travels in the Dakotas, the people I met, the histories I studied, all had a big impact on me. None more so than hearing Lakota drumming. Particularly powerful for me was making an orchestral arrangement to accompany the Lakota version of Amazing Grace, as played and sung by the astonishing Creekside Singers. This was part of the long-running Lakota music project of the South Dakota Symphony, which creates space for mutual learning and appreciation of music from both European and Lakota traditions, and also commissions new works that reflect both. The Creekside Singers made a recording for me of their take on Amazing Grace so that I could support their increasing tempo and their rising pitch across 3 verses. My whole purpose was to create a vessel in which both the orchestra and the drummers could reinterpret a tune important across cultures. Here's the beginning and the first verse of this new Amazing Grace, from a forthcoming recording of music from the Lakota Music Project. The Creekside Singers perform wordlessly with simple vocables with the South Dakota Symphony, conducted by Delta David Geyer. As a creative artist, I can't help but react musically to these sounds that are new to me and so full of power and meaning. I believe this is how music evolves. Now, I haven't studied Lakota drumming and singing in depth as I have Korean gugak, but I can tell you that hearing the drumming all day long at powwows makes quite an impression. My residency with the South Dakota Symphony culminated with a major new work for orchestra titled Wind of Many Voices. It reflects on the landscapes, the peoples, and the histories of South Dakota, which contain rugged beauty as well as tragedy. I'm going to play you the opening, which initially was inspired by a passage in the music of Esa-Pekka Salonen, but increasingly took on a declamatory character akin to Lakota singing. It doesn't quote or even behave like Lakota melody. It's more the power and the drama and the breadth that found voice in my own musical language. Here's the South Dakota Symphony, conducted by Delta David Geyer. Among the many experiences and impressions swirling around in my head at that time were two very different books with similar imagery. Giants in the Earth is a classic novel by Ole Rolvag about the first generation of Norwegian settlers. The ceaseless prairie wind and the vast, seemingly empty spaces severely tested the sanity of the settlers. And then from a different perspective, Neither Wolf Nor Dog by Kent Nurburn. It's a memoir of more recent travels with Lakota elders. The book's climax takes place at the Wounded Knee Memorial. A powerful wind seems to carry voices from the past, overwhelming the author. These two books provided the image, the title, the drama of my work, Wind of Many Voices. And in a way, they refer to my own story in the Dakotas so far. I'm coming to terms with my own history as I've visited the home sites of my Norwegian ancestors, and as I've made friends and made music with Lakota and Dakota elders and youth. So I want to play you the heart of this piece. It's a long evocation of a wind that begins as a gentle breeze and builds to gale force, with mysterious voices calling out ever more insistently. Again, the South Dakota Symphony, conducted by the remarkable Delta David Geyer. So, influences from Korea and from indigenous America have become part of my own musical language. And the journey goes on. Influences from visual art, from literature, jazz, and blues, all material for perhaps another day. Right now, I want to invite you to check out the music we've sampled today and much more at www.theodorewiprud.com. I want to thank Composers Now for giving me the chance to share some music and ideas, and thanks to everyone watching. Bye for now.